A young man wakes up in a stone house on a rocky hillside in Samaria. Walks to the roof. The same terrifying, lightning-laced machinery that will soon crash into the visions of Ezekiel by the Chebar Canal. Same image, again and again, and their eyes are suddenly opened to a reality that was already there. It means to perceive an unseen dimension. God answers. The young man blinks. The veil is pulled back. The Syrian army is still in the valley, but the mountain behind them is on fire. Massive horses of flame are standing on the ridges. Chariots of fire, the mobile throne room machinery of Yahweh, are filling the hillsides. The young man looks at the Syrian troops. Then he looks at the mountain burning with impossible, blinding light, radiating a heat that does not consume the trees. The Syrian king thought he had surrounded the prophet. The king was wrong. The Syrian army is not the besieging force. They are the ones surrounded. The fire is not a sudden rescue mission dispatched at the last second. It is a permanent fixture of reality. Elisha did not summon the chariots. He simply revealed that they were already holding the high ground. The valley belongs to the empire, but the mountain belongs to the throne. The bronze belongs to the king, but the fire belongs to Yahweh. This is the unseen math of the biblical universe. When Elisha tells his servant not to fear, he is not offering a religious platitude. He is offering a factual census of the battlefield. The servant's terror was not the result. Most people read these accounts and assume the chariots of fire are just a dramatic mode of transportation, of the Syrian army being too big. His terror was the result of his vision being too small. And that distinction is exactly what you have to understand when your own Syrian army shows up in the mist. You wake up before the alarm even sounds. The bedroom is dark. The air is cold against your shoulders. And before your feet even hit the wooden floorboards, you start doing the math. You look at the thick medical chart sitting on the kitchen counter, heavy with terminology you do not understand. You look at the bank statements stacked on the desk, the numbers printed in red ink. You listen to the deafening silence in a house that used to be full of conversation, feeling the suffocating weight of a relationship that is actively collapsing. You stand in the middle of your own life, feeling the vibration of a siege moving into position, and you realize you are completely outnumbered. You are waking up in Dothan. When that happens, the natural human reflex is to ask for an extraction. We pray for the Creator to immediately remove the Syrian army from the valley. We pray for the diagnosis to magically vanish overnight, for the crushing debt to be instantly erased, for the conflict to resolve itself without any confrontation. We want the chariots of fire to act like a celestial airlift, a divine taxi service designed to take an aging prophet to heaven, or a supernatural cavalry sent at the last second to rescue a trapped holy man, pulling us out of the valley before the bronze swords are drawn. But Elisha does not pray for his terrified servant to be airlifted, and he does not pray for the Syrian war machine to be destroyed. He prays for the young man to perceive the architecture of the reality he is already standing in. The terror in your chest is not a moral failure. It is a mathematical error. You are calculating the odds of survival based only on the forces you can see with your physical eyes. You are measuring the bronze armor of your circumstances against the fragile wooden spear of your own exhausted strength. And if those are the only two factors in the equation, your panic is entirely justified. If the valley is the only reality that exists, you are going to lose the ground you are standing on. But the valley is never all there is. The mountain is occupied. When you are surrounded by the things that threaten to dismantle your life, the profound biblical response is not to close your eyes and pretend the Syrian troops are not there. Elisha does not deny the reality of the threat. The chariots in the valley are real. The iron axles are real. The danger is absolutely real. But the Syrian army is operating on a lower geographical elevation. You do not need to invent a strategy to defeat the empire, because you are not the one managing from a furious Syrian king. But if you look closer at the ancient Near Eastern context of these vehicles, the defense of the city, you need your eyes open to the forces holding the high ground just behind the threat. And to understand exactly who is holding that high ground, you have to read a song written by a shepherd king centuries earlier. A shepherd king stands in Jerusalem. The smell of burning myrrh fills the sanctuary. His fingers strike the strings of a lyre. The wood vibrates. He sings a song of war. Long before the Syrian king surrounds Samaria, David writes Psalm 68. He sings of the wilderness. He sings of the earth quaking. He sings of the heavens pouring down rain. He looks back at Mount Sinai, where the presence of God descended in smoke and blinding heat. And he records the exact dimensions of the divine army. The chariots of God are tens of thousands and thousands of thousands. Tens of thousands. Thousands of thousands. And innumerable. Overwhelming. Blinding cavalry. The pagan nations boast of 50 chariots. The Egyptians boast of 600 iron axles. The Syrians boast of thousands of bronze wheels cutting through the mud. But David looks at the spiritual topography of Israel and calculates a completely different kind of math. The numbers are staggering. The scale is cosmic. The mountain of Sinai is not an abandoned historical site. The fire that fell on the peak did not burn out when Moses died. At the exact Hebrew architecture of what Elisha is actually looking at, you realize the rescue reading completely misses the weight of the text. The divine presence moved. The throne chariot relocated. The invisible cavalry holds the ground. This is not poetic hyperbole. It is a territorial map. David is mapping the architecture of the unseen realm. He is stating, as a matter of geopolitical fact, that the ultimate military supremacy in the universe does not belong to the empire with the most iron. It belongs to the Creator who rides the clouds. The chariots of God are not parked in a heavenly garage waiting for the end of the world. They are actively deployed. They are saturating the landscape. They are holding the high ground around every single person who belongs to the covenant. Elisha knows this song. When he stands on the roof at Dothan, he is not hoping for a sudden miracle. He is relying on a standing army. He is looking at the Syrian troops and doing the math of Psalm 68. He knows the thousands of Syrian chariots in the valley are hopelessly outnumbered by the thousands upon thousands of fiery wheels holding the ridges. The servant panics because he only sees the bronze. The prophet rests because he sees the fire. But the most profound revelation of that morning is not simply that the fire outnumbers the bronze. It is what the fire actually does. The chariots are not an extraction team. They are a territorial claim. The real question of the fire on the mountain isn't when the Syrian army finally attacks. Because what happens next on that hillside completely destroys our modern assumptions about how God fights for his people. Elisha does not order the chariots to charge. The mountain is covered in divine artillery, but no heavenly arrows are fired. The fire does not descend into the valley to incinerate the bronze. The deafening crash of celestial wheels never hits the Syrian camp. Instead, a strange silence falls over the valley. The Syrian soldiers are struck with a sudden, blinding disorientation. They grope in the damp dirt. They drop their heavy iron shields. Elisha simply walks down the hill, steps into the middle of the bewildered war machine, and leads the entire Syrian army away like a line of confused children. The chariots of fire never actually engage in physical combat. They do not fight at the Jordan River, and they do not fight at Dothan. This shatters our fundamental expectation of what divine power is supposed to do. When we pray for the chariots, we are usually praying for annihilation. We want the threat eradicated. We want the overwhelming, blinding fire of Yahweh to sweep through the valley and burn our specific Syrian army to ash. We want the medical diagnosis incinerated. We want the financial ruin completely reversed in a single, spectacular display of power. But look at the text. Elisha's servant is completely delivered. How will God get Elisha out of this? It is this. Who really owns the ground Elisha is standing on from the threat? Yet the Syrian army is not destroyed. The fire is not an evacuation plan. It is a reinforcement. The mobile throne of Yahweh the Massive. Terrifying. Merkavah does not manifest to pull you out of the danger. It manifests to stand with you inside of it. The presence of the chariots on the mountain does not mean the siege is fake. It means the siege is entirely irrelevant. The Syrian king still has his bronze. The enemy still has their weapons. The circumstances surrounding your life might still be pressing in, cold and heavy and terrifyingly real. But the jurisdiction has changed. The math is different. You are no longer a solitary target trapped in a valley. You are a citizen of a kingdom whose sovereign ruler is actively occupying the ridges above your life. The wheels of polished beryl are turning. The massive horses of fire are breathing heat into the morning mist. The scent of ozone and burning wood hangs in the air, a physical reminder that the high ground is taken. And this brings us to the final, echoing truth of these burning wheels. Because the pattern Elisha saw on that mountain does not stop in the dirt of the Old Testament. It weaves through every timeline, reaching all the way to the final chapters of the story. And it is pointing directly at what you are carrying today. And the answer changes how you read every military encounter in the Bible. It changes how you understand the architecture of heaven itself. A prophet walks to the edge of the muddy Jordan, and the fire separates the living from the leaving. A terrified servant looks down at a bronze army, and the mountain reveals it is already occupied. A shepherd king strikes the strings of a lyre, and tens of thousands of fiery wheels hold the high ground. An exiled priest sits in the dirt by a Babylonian canal, and the impossible machinery claims the foreign soil. A Syrian king marches to capture one man, and the empire is led away completely blind. The Israelites tremble at the clatter of iron axles in the valley, and the throne of heaven answers with fire on the ridge. The creator of the universe builds a throne and places it on burning wheels to prove there is nowhere he cannot reach. Same fire, same throne. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the young servant on that cold stone roof. He did not get a new weapon. The Syrian army was not destroyed. Not a single heavenly arrow was fired into the mist. All that changed was his vision. He realized the fire was not there to evacuate him from the danger. But more importantly, it changes how you process the morning. You wake up and realize you are the one under siege. Because you will have those mornings. The fire was there to stand with him inside of it. If you are in a season where the siege feels suffocating, where the medical charts and the bank statements and the broken relationships are assembled in the valley like an army of iron, stop asking for an immediate evacuation. Stop calculating the odds based only on the bronze you can see with your physical eyes. The valley belongs to the empire, but the mountain is occupied. If this shifted something in your vision, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who is waking up surrounded right now. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. And may the God who rides the clouds, the God who holds the high ground above your deepest terror, open your eyes to the fire on the ridge and give you the peace to walk straight through the middle of the army. You will wake up. Look at your bank account. Look at your medical chart. Look at the broken pieces of your family to greet the dawn, and feels his blood run entirely cold. He looks down into the valley, and you will do the math of the valley. You will tally up the forces gathered against you. You will feel the cold panic in your chest, and you will ask, exactly like the servant, what you are supposed to do. When you are so hopelessly outnumbered, Elisha's answer to his servant is not a strategy. It is not a battle plan. It is a request for a shift in vision, to understand what actually broke through the dawn light that morning, and why it holds the power to completely rewire how you face the things that threaten you. You have to strip away your modern assumptions about warfare. You have to step back into the dirt and the dust of the ancient world. The place to start is the vehicle itself. Because in the Bronze Age, a chariot was never just a cart with wheels. To understand the terror of the young servant on the balcony, you have to understand the mathematics of ancient warfare. For 1,000 years in the ancient Near East, infantry won skirmishes, but chariots won empires. It is difficult for modern minds to grasp the psychological impact of this machine. If you were an ancient foot soldier standing in a valley, the mist is still clinging to the ground. But cutting through it is the unmistakable glint of bronze reflecting the morning sun, gripping a wooden spear and a stretched leather shield. The approach of a chariot squadron was a sensory nightmare. You did not just see them coming, you felt them. You felt the vibration moving up through the soles of your feet long before they crested the ridge. You heard the deafening, rhythmic crash of iron-rimmed wheels destroying the terrain. you saw the blinding reflection of bronze plating, the dust clouds blotting out the sun. The sheer speed of massive warhorses bearing down on your position, while an archer unleashed arrows, with a composite bow that could pierce armor at 100 yards. The chariot was the ancient equivalent of the armored tank. The chariot was not a battlefield accessory. It was the ultimate manifestation of imperial supremacy. The empires that possessed them, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, and the Arameans of Syria, controlled the flatlands and the trade routes. The nations that did not possess them were forced into the hills, and Israel was a hill people. For generations, the Israelites were terrified of this specific technology. In the book of Judges, they failed to conquer the valleys, specifically because the inhabitants had chariots of iron. To an Israelite mind, a chariot meant you were outmatched. It meant the enemy had more funding, better engineering, and overwhelming speed. He hears the stamp of hooves on packed earth. He hears the snort of Syrian warhorses. It meant you were going to lose the ground you were standing on. The machine represented the absolute limit of what human power could achieve on earth. And this is where the biblical narrative begins to do something subversive with the imagery of the empire. The text takes the ultimate symbol of human dominance, the weapon that strikes terror into the heart of every peasant farmer, and it completely reassigns it. It takes the crown jewel of the Syrian military complex and turns it into a footnote in a much larger, invisible economy. Because the Syrian king thinks he has surrounded Dothan with the apex of military technology. But the writer of Kings knows that the real seat of power in the universe does not ride on wooden axles. The prophets understood this first. Years before Elisha stands on that balcony in Dothan, his mentor walks down to the edge of the Jordan River. Elijah is tired. His earthly ministry is ending, and he is waiting to cross over. But the vehicle that arrives to collect him shatters every category of what a chariot is supposed to do. Elijah walks. Elisha follows. They leave Gilgal. They pass through Bethel. They reach Jericho. At every stop, the air grows heavier. He hears the rhythmic clank of iron armor. Thousands of men pulling a ring of steel tight around the sleeping city of Dothan. A group of 50 prophets trails behind them, keeping their distance. Watching from the hills, they know what is coming. They whisper about it. Elisha tells them to be quiet. The tension is thick enough to choke on. They reach the muddy banks of the Jordan River. The old prophet rolls up his leather mantle. He strikes the surface of the water. The sound echoes like a whip crack. The water folds back. Two men walk across the dry riverbed. They step onto the eastern bank. The dust settles around their sandals. Elijah asks what he can do before he is taken. Elisha asks for a double portion of the Spirit. And then, the sky tears open. Most people picture a fiery carriage pulling up like a heavenly transport service. They picture a chariot landing softly. Elijah stepping in, taking the reins, and riding off into the clouds while his student waves goodbye. But read the second chapter of 2 Kings closely. A sudden, violent storm brews in a clear sky. A chariot of fire appears. Horses of fire surround it. But they do not stop to pick up a passenger. They do not wait for the old prophet to climb aboard. They drive directly between the two men. They sever the mentor from the student. The text is completely explicit. The chariot and the horses separated the two of them, and he realizes they are here for one man, his master. The servant runs down the stairs, but Elijah goes up in a whirlwind. A violent storm of wind. He does not ride the chariot to heaven. The chariot simply enforces the dividing line between the earthly realm and the heavenly extraction. The vehicle is not a transport. It is a boundary. It is the terrifying, blinding collision of the divine realm intersecting with the dirt of the Jordan Valley. It is the raw, untamed presence of Yahweh creating a firewall of burning wheels between the man who is leaving and the man who must stay behind. Elisha watches the whirlwind pull his master into the sky. The wind howls. The fire scorches the air. The smell of ozone and burning ozone fills his lungs. He cries out into the storm, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." He tears his clothes. He picks up the fallen cloak. He walks back to the water alone. For years, Elisha carries that image, burned into his retinas. The swirling fire, the massive horses, the sudden realization that Israel's true defense is not the king's bronze-plated army back in Samaria, but the detail that changes everything, the specific word that unlocks what Elisha actually saw that day by the river, and what he will see again years later on the balcony in Dothan, is hidden in the Hebrew vocabulary of the vehicle itself. His chest tight, his breathing shallow, and he cries out the only logical conclusion to the math of this moment. But the detail that changes how you read, both the whirlwind at the Jordan and the siege at Dothan, is hidden in the ancient language itself. When Elisha watches his master disappear into the storm, he cries out, "The chariots of Israel and its horsemen." The word your English Bible translates as chariots is the Hebrew noun merkavah. Its root is the Hebrew verb rakhav, which simply means to ride or to mount. It is the word used when a victorious king mounts a war horse or steps into his royal carriage to parade through a conquered city. It appears 44 times in the Old Testament, usually referring to the bronze-plated war machines of Egypt or Syria. But when the biblical writers use Merkavah to describe the fiery manifestations of Yahweh, the word expands beyond a piece of military equipment. It becomes an architectural blueprint. If digging into the ancient Hebrew architecture of the text is stirring up questions you've never considered, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So, the prophets begin to track this machinery. Decades after Elisha, a priest named Ezekiel sits in the dirt by a canal in Babylon, exiled and crushed, and he sees the ultimate expression of this Merkavah. He looks at the northern horizon. Alas, my master, what shall we do? And what happens next is a moment that echoes backward and forward across the ancient text, and sees a massive storm cloud flashing with lightning. He sees 4 terrifying living creatures, wheels within wheels, gleaming like polished beryl and towering, intersecting rims covered entirely in eyes. The sound of their wings is like the roar of rushing waters. Above this deafening, impossible machinery rests a platform, gleaming like terrible crystal, and above that expanse sits a throne made of sapphire. The Merkavah is not a divine taxi designed to transport humans. It is the mobile throne room of the Creator. When Elisha sees the chariot of fire at the Jordan River, he is not seeing a supernatural extraction team sent to carry Elijah into the clouds. He is seeing the throne of God violently intersecting with earthly reality. He is seeing the massive, burning machinery of divine presence, claiming jurisdiction over the dirt of Israel, moving with absolute sovereignty across the geopolitical landscape. The chariot is the throne, and the throne is on wheels. It can go anywhere. It cannot be stopped by geographical borders, by ancient empires, or by the walls of a besieged city. And that throne chariot changes everything about the morning Elisha wakes up in Samaria. Because when his panicked servant runs onto the roof and points at the Syrian troops filling the valley, Elisha does not need to ask heaven to mount a rescue mission. He just needs his servant to look at the math. It is a sudden eruption of fire on the horizon. The same burning wheels that separated Elijah at the Jordan River, the stone of the roof is cold beneath the young man's sandals. The mist in the valley is still thick, damp against his skin. But the Syrian war machine is already assembled. He sees the bronze armor gleaming in the early light. He hears the snorting of the horses. He feels the vibration of thousands of men waiting for the order to march. He is doing the math, and the math ends in his death. Elisha stands beside him. The prophet looks at the exact same valley. He sees the exact same Syrian chariots. He hears the exact same clanking of iron axles. But his pulse does not change. He does not call for the city gates to be barricaded. He does not look for a hidden escape route through the hills. He does not beg God to send an earthquake to swallow the Syrian king. Instead, he turns to his terrified servant and speaks a sentence of absolute, gravity-defying peace. Do not be afraid. For those who are with us, are more than those who are with them. Then, Elisha prays, "O Lord, please open his eyes that he may see." The Hebrew verb Elisha uses here is pakach. It is a highly specific word. It does not mean to give sight to someone who is physically blind. It is the exact same word used in Genesis chapter 3. When Adam and Eve eat the fruit,